From the very beginning, the video takes a bold stance, questioning not what happened, but why no one is allowed to ask. The narrator points out a pattern among influencers and insiders who insist it's inappropriate to question Charlie Kirk's death while his widow Erica is still mourning. Yet this emotional shield, they argue, feels too convenient. If someone's husband was truly assassinated, wouldn't a grieving wife want every possible truth uncovered? Wouldn't she demand answers instead of silence? That's where the doubts begin. The narrator frames Erica's quietness not as heartbreak, but as a calculated pause, a silence that protects something bigger. By appealing to common sense, the voiceover asks viewers to look past sympathy and start thinking critically. The story, once presented as a personal tragedy, now begins to resemble a controlled narrative. The media's insistence on respecting privacy sounds more like a coordinated attempt to suppress curiosity. As the scene builds, tension replaces empathy. The audience is no longer being told what happened, but why they shouldn't talk about it. The narrator hints that emotional manipulation is one of the oldest tools in crisis control. When you can't answer the questions, you make people feel guilty for asking. And that, they suggest, is exactly what's happening here. This first revelation doesn't accuse anyone directly, but it cracks open a door that the rest of the story will force wide open. Erica's silence isn't treated as mourning anymore. It's framed as the first sign that the truth behind Charlie Kirk's death may be far darker and far more deliberate than anyone was led to believe. The video moves from suspicion to outright disbelief as the narrator dismantles the official explanation of Charlie Kirk's death. A story that once sounded like a tragic accident now feels more like fiction. Early reports painted a dramatic but strangely convenient picture. Charlie's miraculous survival, the way his incredible bone density supposedly stopped the bullet just short of fatal damage, and how doctors described the outcome as divine intervention. But the narrator calls this a Marvel-style fantasy, a polished script meant to pacify the public rather than inform it. They argue that the more people look into it, the more the so-called miracle begins to fall apart. Medical professionals have quietly questioned the logic of the injuries described. The angles don't match, the explanations don't align with real physics, and the official statements seem almost rehearsed. According to the narrator, what once looked like a random act of violence now appears to be something calculated, possibly even coordinated. The tone grows darker as the video hints that Charlie's death may not have been spontaneous at all. The phrase military operation surfaces, suggesting precision, planning, and an intent far beyond personal conflict. The implication is clear. Someone orchestrated this, and someone powerful is managing the aftermath. By this point, viewers are encouraged to stop thinking of this as a tragedy and start seeing it as an operation wrapped in emotional storytelling. The miracle narrative isn't just suspicious. It's the distraction that keeps the public from asking who might have benefited most from the story being told this way. Just as public interest in the case begins to fade, the video reignites it with the appearance of a new unnamed witness. This person, according to the narrator, has come forward with information that directly contradicts the official version of events. Their account suggests that what happened to Charlie Kirk wasn't random, wasn't spontaneous, and may have been carefully manipulated from the very beginning. The narrator explains that the witness described strange activity shortly before the incident. Unfamiliar faces in restricted areas, unexplained movements near the stage, and key details in medical documents that didn't line up afterward. Even more unsettling, parts of Charlie's medical report were allegedly altered before being released to the public. Within hours of the news breaking, social media exploded. Hashtags like #KirkCase and #WhatHappened to Charlie began trending across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, with users dissecting every piece of available footage. The witness also claimed that something about the timeline was off, that the events leading up to the shooting had been condensed or changed in official summaries. Some details, they said, were too perfect, almost like a narrative crafted for television. That comment alone set the internet ablaze. The narrator doesn't name the source or show proof, but insists the information has been verified to a certain degree. They remind viewers that whistleblowers often fear retaliation, and that anonymity doesn't mean falsehood. In fact, the secrecy might confirm how dangerous the truth really is. By the end of this section, the tone is electric. The story has shifted from rumor to revelation. What was once dismissed as conspiracy talk now feels like an unfolding investigation, one with witnesses, altered records, and powerful people who may have gone to great lengths to control what the world was allowed to see. When Candace Owens steps into the story, the tone changes completely. What had been whispers and speculation suddenly becomes a full-scale media storm. The video describes how Candace, known for her relentless drive and refusal to stay silent, launched her own independent investigation into Charlie Kirk's death. She wasn't content with press statements or filtered reports. Instead, she began connecting pieces that others seemed determined to ignore: the medical inconsistencies, the sudden social media silence of witnesses, and the rapid disappearance of key online posts. According to the narrator, Candace openly questioned why so many people who were close to Charlie suddenly refused interviews or blocked comments. Even those who once appeared vocal about the tragedy had gone quiet. Her tone was sharp but emotional, a mix of frustration and disbelief, as she pointed out that every time someone tried to dig deeper, the same message echoed back: "It's not the right time." For Candace, that phrase wasn't respect. It was censorship dressed up as compassion. She began posting fragments of her findings on social media, hinting that the so-called miracle survival story wasn't just exaggerated, it was crafted. She alleged that parts of Charlie's medical report didn't make sense, with treatment logs that contradicted each other and witness statements that didn't match the public timeline. Her words sent shockwaves through political and media circles alike. Some praised her courage. Others accused her of exploiting tragedy for views. But as the narrator puts it, Candace didn't care about popularity. She cared about truth. Her posts reignited global interest in the Kirk case, transforming it from a fading headline into a mystery no one could ignore. By the end of this section, the narrator poses a haunting question. Was Candace Owens uncovering a truth that others feared? Or was she walking straight into something far more dangerous than she realized? As the video progresses, the tension deepens, and so does the mystery. The narrator introduces independent analyst Andrew Coe, who begins piecing together what he calls the missing fragments of Charlie Kirk's medical record. His findings, the narrator claims, expose an unsettling pattern. Documents that were supposed to provide clarity have been edited, redacted, or simply vanished. Coe points out glaring discrepancies: missing timestamps, absent procedure notes, and blank spaces where medical details should have been. He suggests that the report made public might not be the original at all, but an abridged copy designed to satisfy public curiosity without revealing too much. According to him, the real file, the complete version, remains in the hands of only a small circle of people, possibly those with direct ties to the organization surrounding Charlie. Then comes another alarming detail. During the time of the incident, the area's CCTV system reportedly malfunctioned. No footage, no clear visuals, no evidence of what truly happened. For an event of this magnitude, that coincidence feels too precise to ignore. As the narrator recounts these revelations, the tone turns almost cinematic: quiet, deliberate, tense. The audience is urged to think critically. If everything was an accident, why were records altered, footage missing, and witnesses silenced? Meanwhile, Candace Owens keeps pushing forward, claiming that what's missing in the data might actually be the key to understanding what happened. The narrator echoes her sentiment that gaps in the story aren't just mistakes, they're intentional absences. By the end of this section, one thing is clear. Every record that should have brought closure only raises more questions. The truth isn't being lost by accident. It's being managed. And the more that disappears from the official story, the more the world begins to wonder what someone is so desperate to hide. Just when viewers think the mystery couldn't grow more tangled, the video dives into the conflicting testimonies of those who claim to have seen what happened that night. The narrator explains that several eyewitnesses have now come forward, and their accounts don't align with the official version, not even close. Some say they heard 2 gunshots in rapid succession, others swear there were 3. Yet the public report insists there was only 1. That single inconsistency has become the fuel for an entire storm of speculation. One witness, identified only as Cooper, gives a chilling first-hand account. He says he stood just a few meters from Charlie Kirk when the chaos erupted. According to him, the sound was deafening, a sharp, echoing pop that shattered the quiet. When he turned, he saw blood on Charlie's neck, and instantly knew the wound was fatal. But what really sent shockwaves across social media was his next statement. Cooper claims he saw 2 flashes of light, one from the crowd, another from the side of the stage. That simple detail changes everything. If there were flashes from multiple directions, could that mean more than one weapon or more than one shooter? The narrator makes no direct accusation, but the question lingers like smoke in the air. Soon, 2 more witnesses echo Cooper's account, saying they too noticed unusual bursts of light, though none are willing to go fully on record. Then, another twist. An audio technician at the event is heard in a leaked recording saying, "That sound didn't come from the stage." The clip is deleted within hours, but copies spread across platforms like wildfire. Suddenly, the inconsistencies are no longer just theories. They're evidence of something being hidden. By the end of this section, the narrator's tone turns cold and deliberate. What began as one man's tragic death now feels like a scene rewritten in real time. Too many sounds, too many lights, too many silences. And somewhere in that confusion, the official version of events starts to crumble under the weight of its own contradictions. The narrator shifts tone here, calm, deliberate, and unnervingly precise, as the story takes its most sinister turn yet. What began as inconsistencies now looks, they say, like intentional suppression. A leaked audio recording emerges from someone on the technical team at the event. In it, a voice quietly insists that the loud sound heard during the incident didn't come from the stage or the equipment. Within hours of surfacing online, the clip vanishes, deleted, flagged, scrubbed, but not before thousands of users share it across forums. To many, that single moment feels like confirmation that someone is pulling strings behind the scenes. The narrator explains that soon after the leak, insiders at Turning Point USA, the organization Charlie Kirk founded, allegedly received instructions to stop speaking to the press. Some were told interviews were inappropriate, while the investigation was ongoing. Others say they were directly warned not to comment for the good of the organization. That phrase, "for the good of the organization," becomes the focal point of outrage across social media. Viewers and commentators alike begin asking, if there's nothing to hide, why silence everyone who might have answers? Online, the backlash is immediate. Critics accuse Turning Point USA of prioritizing damage control over truth, while supporters argue the silence is necessary to prevent misinformation. But the narrator draws attention to a troubling irony. An organization built on free speech suddenly enforcing complete quiet. Then the calm before the storm. Investigators are rumored to be reopening aspects of the case, this time focusing on information control. Who had access to data? Who issued media directives? And what communications disappeared in the days following Charlie's death? By the end of this segment, the narrator leaves viewers with one chilling thought. Maybe the most important evidence isn't what's been released, but what's been buried. And somewhere in that silence, they suggest, lies the truth that someone powerful is desperate to keep hidden. Just as the rumors reach a breaking point, Candace Owens detonates the story. The narrator describes how her newest podcast episode drops like a bomb, calm in tone but devastating in content. She claims to possess text messages allegedly linked to Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. Messages that point toward secrecy, manipulation, and control inside the organization during the months before his death. The moment she starts reading, the air in the studio reportedly shifts. Quiet, tense, electric. The narrator recounts that Candace began by venting her frustration with modern media and social platforms, accusing them of being digital battlegrounds where bots and political operatives bury uncomfortable truths. Then, in her trademark style, she pivots, announcing that what she's about to reveal could change everything about how people view Charlie's death. When she reads the alleged texts aloud, listeners are stunned. Her voice steady, her words sharp, she claims the messages suggest internal conflicts within TPUSA, discussions about silencing narratives, managing public perception, and keeping things controlled. Within minutes of the episode's release, hashtags like #OwensFiles and #Kirk messages trend globally. The internet goes wild. Podcasts react live, YouTubers analyze screenshots, and Reddit threads dissect every line. Some accuse Candace of exploiting tragedy for fame, but others call her brave, the only one willing to stand up to an organization that, in their eyes, has grown too powerful to question. Candace herself refuses to back down. When people start deciding who gets to speak and who doesn't, she says, you no longer have truth. You have theater. Then the twist that flips the entire narrative. Andrew Cave, the official spokesperson for Turning Point USA, appears on air and confirms the text messages are real. No denial, no spin, just a brief acknowledgement that changes everything. The narrator closes this section with a heavy pause. What began as speculation has now entered verified territory. The messages are real. The silence is broken. And Candace Owens, whether hero or heretic, has just turned the Kirk case from a mystery into a movement, one that's about to tear open the walls of an empire built on influence and control. When Turning Point USA finally breaks its silence, the response shocks everyone. The narrator explains that after days of online chaos, Andrew Cave, the organization's official spokesperson, steps forward for a live interview. And instead of denying Candace Owens's allegations, he confirms them. The text messages she exposed, he admits, are real. No spin, no excuses, no attempt to redirect. His brief but honest confirmation sends the internet into meltdown. What had been labeled conspiracy only a week earlier suddenly becomes undeniable fact. The narrator's tone sharpens as they describe the fallout. Commentators call it one of the most damaging public admissions in TPUSA's history. The organization, once known for its strong stance on free speech and conservative unity, now looks fractured and defensive. Supporters flood forums with disbelief. Some demand transparency, while others accuse the media of twisting the story. Yet one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Someone inside Turning Point had been hiding something, and now the silence has collapsed. Candace, meanwhile, responds not with triumph, but with disappointment. In her next podcast episode, she says the real scandal isn't the messages themselves, but the fact that TPUSA waited so long to tell the truth. If honesty only comes after exposure, she says, it's not integrity, it's damage control. Her words cut deep, resonating with those who feel betrayed by the organization's hesitation. According to the narrator, the internal fallout is immediate. Staff members are reportedly divided, some defending leadership, others backing Candace's call for full transparency. The donor base fractures, and the once unified voice of TPUSA begins to sound more like a collection of whispers and denials. By the end of this section, the narrator makes a striking observation. The story has outgrown its origins. It's no longer about one man's mysterious death, but about what happens when truth collides with loyalty. The confirmation of the messages doesn't end the controversy. It multiplies it. And as Turning Point USA scrambles to protect its image, one thing becomes clear. Silence may have been the shield before, but now it's the evidence. By the time the final act unfolds, the story has become much bigger than Charlie Kirk. It's about the people demanding answers and the movement rising from the silence. The narrator explains how Candace Owens, no longer speaking as just a commentator, transforms into a voice for those who feel betrayed, censored, or ignored. Her latest podcast episode opens on a somber note as she reads a public letter from longtime Turning Point USA donors, John and Emily Mappin, who praise her courage and condemn the organization's lack of transparency. Their message is clear. If TPUSA truly values the ideals Charlie once stood for, freedom, honesty, and open dialogue, then it must stop hiding behind public relations walls and face the truth head-on. The narrator describes the moment as both emotional and defiant. Candace's voice trembles as she reads the words, but her conviction only hardens. The letter ends with a single demand. The investigation into Charlie Kirk's death must be open, thorough, and honest, no matter how uncomfortable the results. That line, shared across millions of screens, ignites something far greater than a scandal. It sparks a movement. Soon, the divide within Turning Point USA becomes impossible to ignore. On one side are those loyal to the organization's image, insisting that the focus should remain on protecting its legacy. On the other are those rallying behind Candace, arguing that legacy means nothing without truth. Donors withdraw, staff members leak information, and social media erupts into a digital civil war. The narrator paints a picture of Candace standing at the center of it all, calm, resolute, and unafraid. "This isn't about politics anymore," she says, her voice breaking slightly. "It's about integrity." She claims that what started as one man's suspicious death could become one of the biggest political revelations of the decade, exposing how influence, fear, and silence intertwine behind closed doors. As the video draws to a close, the narrator delivers one final line that lingers like a warning. The truth doesn't die. It just waits for someone brave enough to speak it. Whether Candace Owens is uncovering that truth or being consumed by it remains to be seen. But one thing is undeniable. The fight for answers has only just begun, and the world is finally paying attention.